Take a look to the sky just before you die. It's the last time you will. Rock and roll, that's a roar, fills the crumbling sky. Shut the door, fill the soul, the ruthless cry. Screamer down, are his eyes through the silence so loud. Crackle's done, all is gone except the will to be. Now they see what will be, blinded eyes to see. Oh, the metal souls. Time marches on. Oh, the metal souls.
black pride of dick. That's a sex machine to all the chicks. You're damn right.
Welcome everyone back. Sunday night, 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, the Radical Republicans live show, and I am your host, Jerome Bell, the J Black Mamba in the house, bringing it to you live, unedited, uncensored, unfiltered, unapologetic, and unscripted truth. Because that's the way we want it. That's the way we need it. Because of the bad media, the bad media that's going around. We don't have truth anymore. We have to bring truth to it. So I'm gonna go ahead and jump into it really, really quick now because one thing I want to break out. We got some breaking news here coming out. About 2 hours ago, here in Idaho, northern Idaho, we got updated about 24 minutes ago. We had multiple firefighters who was shot in an apparent ambush while responding to a brush fire on Canfield Mountain up near Coeur d'Alene. That's northern Idaho. For you guys that may not know, the fire is suspected to have been set intentionally to lure emergency services into the area. Authorities are actively searching for the suspect or suspects. We're pretty sure it's probably more than one, like it always is. However, they only seem to catch one lone guy. It's pretty funny how they do that. But so they have a shelter-in-place order issued for nearby residents. The situation does remain fluid as more police and fire crews from neighboring regions have been called in to assist. So if you're up in northern Idaho and the Kootenai County Bob Norris Sheriff, Kootenai County Sheriff Bob Norris did a press conference, and apparently they're in camouflage taking shots with high-powered rifles. I think we have 2 firefighters that have been killed, 9 others wounded, but they're bringing victims off the mountain, so really don't know how many victims are shooters yet, but at least 2. So shelter in place, and the sheriff says neutralize the threat. If you're able to, go ahead and take your shot and take these guys out. So are we heading into the season of false flags? Are we heading in the season of terrorist acts? What is going on here in American Idaho? Where I am. But for tonight, let me get through one of my sponsors first, and I'll do the next one last. So we're gonna do Supermassive Black Coffee. Are you tired of the same old corporate coffee, diluted and devoid of character? It's time to break free from the chains of mediocrity with Supermassive Black Coffee. Crafted from 100% organic beans, this coffee is fire roasted in a Victorian era roaster, a relic from an age when true craftsmanship thrived. This unique process allows the flames to caress each bean, unlocking bold, rich flavors with dark chocolate undertones and a smooth, smoky finish. In a time of soaring coffee prices and supply chain disruptions, Supermassive Black Coffee stands as a beacon of quality and resilience. While others compromise, this brand remains steadfast, delivering a brew that defies convention and invites coffee lovers to explore the depths of flavor and mystique. So join the rebellion against the mundane. Visit supermassiveblackcoffee.com and use code MBN for 20% off your order. Embrace the conspiracy, sip the mastery at supermassiveblackcoffee.com. Now, today we're going to have an all-vet show. I'm not sure if I had an all-veteran show. No, we have one hour, maybe one another hour, but we got 2. We got 2 heroes on tonight. The first one is Ryan McDermott. I'm going to bring him home in a second. He served in the 3rd Infantry Division out of Fort Stewart, Georgia, if I'm not mistaken. The Rock of the Marne, if you guys don't understand what the Rock of the Marne mean, that happened in World War I and July 15th. That's how they got their name and their trademark, led by Major General Joseph Dickman at the Marne River near Château-Thierry in France. And what it means is we shall remain, is what he says. But in Downriver is the name of Ryan's book. We're going to talk about that. It's a memoir of warrior poet Ryan McDermott, which takes readers from the front lines of the 2003 invasion of Iraq, where he led an infantry platoon in several intense battles, including the Battle for Baghdad, as part of the 3rd Infantry Division through the collapse of Lehman Brothers during the 2008 financial crisis, and into the private struggles of reintegration, post-traumatic stress disorder, and fatherhood. This literary memoir explores the emotional toll of combat, the burden of battlefield leadership, and the collapse of identity that follows war and ambition. Told with raw honesty and poetic insight, McDermott examines what it means to survive the battlefield, only to face another war at home with family, with memory, and oneself. Through vivid storytelling, the combat-born poetry, Downriver offers a rare and unflinching account of modern American warrior's journey from patriotic idealism to disillusionment and ultimately to renewal. It speaks to veterans, military families, and anyone who have struggled to rebuild after loss. And we know we have a bunch of that with a bunch of our brothers and sisters coming from downrange, coming from the war. Ryan, welcome, brother. How you doing?
Jerome, thanks for having me on. I'm doing great.
Yeah, man. Good love to hear you. Hey, man. So, question, real quick before we jump into it. I'm gonna let you introduce yourself first. So go ahead and introduce yourself to the.
Well, you did a great introduction. I'm originally from Orlando, Florida. I grew up sort of blue collar background down there. My mom, and my story, my actually book goes through a lot of that. I ended up going to West Point, and so I served in the Army for I did only 6 years. So I did one tour in Iraq, got back, did a stateside deployment, decided to get out. Along the way, started a family, went to business school, went to Wall Street, and I kind of go into this in the book where there's a collapse in there, but I kind of have worked between industry and the government and defense ever since. And I've got 3 kids. My oldest son just graduated West Point. He branched armor. Thanks. And I have 2 other adult children. It's weird to say they're adults. 18 is, but my daughter just graduated high school. My middle son is 20 years old.
Oh, very good. I got 3 boys myself, and yeah, it is kind of funny to call them adults, but mine's been adulting for a little while now. They've been adulting for quite some time. Matter of fact, my son, my oldest, he just called me today and said, "Hey, Dad, I'm finally getting paid for major." He's a major in the Air Force. He's an MD, a doctor. So he made major. So congrats to my son. And
congrats. That's awesome. That's
awesome. He's doing his thing, man. We have a family. My dad was in the Air Force, sister in the Army. I did Navy, and my oldest son went to the Air Force. So it was pretty cool.
Yeah, there's a bit of that in my family. Air Force, Navy, and on my wife's side, Marines. Her father was a Marine, so we've kind of got all the branches represented.
Okay, very good. Okay, so go ahead and tell us more about the book, man. Tell us about your 3rd Infantry Division. You went to Iraq.
Yeah. So, well, the book. I think the book is kind of it's a bit of everything. It kind of hits my whole life, and I want to just
I've read some of it. I must be honest, I haven't read it all yet because I got 2 books. I got yours and the next guest book I'm working on now.
No, that's fine.
It's a good read, though. Yeah.
No, it's a lot. No, I appreciate it. So, we just had PTSD Awareness Day. I think it was 2 days. Was it 2 days ago? Yeah, 2 days ago. And it's sort of Awareness Month. And so one of the goals, I went through a rock bottom moment in 2011. That's kind of how the book starts out. It hit after I hit rock bottom. I had a career on Wall Street, a brief career on Wall Street. Everything, the 2008 sort of blow up, and then in the aftermath, difficult to kind of keep everything going. On the personal front, the professional front soon followed. So I start with that. And so the book itself, the purpose of it was a cathartic journey to write and make sense of everything. Like, how do I make sense of my life at that point in time? And so I refined it, and so I kind of finished this thing around most of it, like 90% of it, sort of the rough draft in 2011, and so for 14 years I've kind of just worked on it and iterated on it. And the goal of it is really sort of putting it, for me it was just a sort of completion. My son going off to West Point was kind of like, I think the time I was like, he wrote the afterword to it, and I wanted him to have the last word, at least for this piece. But the purpose is, there's been too many veterans that have committed suicide. Right. And I went through some dark times, and I know others have gone through dark times. And one of the hardest things when you're going through that is feeling alone, right, and feeling isolated, and feeling like, and not wanting to burden other people with the challenges, at that point in time, the challenges I was facing. So why, one of the things that really pushed me over the edge is just seeing that continue. And with this hope that the book might reach people who may be going through a dark time and sort of see, hey, there's other people that have gone through this. There's vulnerability here. And for my part, part of the story. So I kind of break it up. The first part is sort of this rock bottom moment, and then I go to seek counseling. You know, I went to a counselor and sort of just called somebody up, and it wasn't through the VA system at that time. I just went and, you know, used my work, sort of healthcare, and saw a counselor, and we kind of started retracing like things. And so in the book, it's dramatized. I retrace it linearly. I go through my childhood.
Yeah, I remember in the book when you went to go see your therapist, the first thing you said, "Tell me about your life."
Yeah. Where do we begin? Where do we begin? Because when you start unwinding things, I think a lot of things, what I kind of took away from the experience is that things that happen can have a little bit of a snowball effect that cause other issues down the line. And so one of the things with my childhood, the first part is sort of my childhood up at West Point, and the culminating event really was, you know, my mother and father, biological father, were estranged. I'd never met my biological father until after I graduated West Point.
Oh no, man! I thought that only happened to black kids, bro. You actually mean white dudes don't meet their fathers either? I'm just saying that because that's a myth, of course. I know it's a myth, but it's a stereotype, out here in America that black kids don't know their fathers, and here you are, a vet, decorated vet, an author, who never met his dad either.
Yeah, I hadn't, and it was one of those things that kind of like, it's sort of a mystery. My mom was smart enough; she didn't like paint a negative picture of him, but he just didn't. What it turns out is he denied paternity and just paid child support, and then, but that's actually a sort of a revelation I kind of worked through after I went to West Point. So my senior year of high school, I find out that I have a brother and sister that are close by, and sort of half brother and sister. And then my parents divorce and we lose our house. I become essentially homeless and have to move in with a friend of mine until I ended up getting my appointment to West Point. And that began kind of sort of initiated my need to kind of write everything, because I didn't have anybody to really talk to about this.
Right.
And so at West Point, I started writing a journal, and the original journal is in the book, where you kind of trace. It's edited, of course, and pruned from stuff. But I started writing for my own catharsis to try to understand, to try to see myself. And I started writing poetry after a literature class, and just sort of spiritual pieces as I explored my own my faith. I started to become, I explored my faith at the academy, and so more than probably half the poems I wrote when I was at West Point were really about kind of grounded in some sort of spiritual faith. Heaven was one of them. And so that kind of the part one. But you brought up a point about my father. Yeah, at 4 years at West Point, he knew who I was. We kind of had each other's like number, but he never came to visit. And so I had to be the one to initiate. Okay. And so it was only after I graduated West Point that I felt like, hey, I have the confidence to go pursue. Now, the funny thing is, and it turned out he was like the vice mayor of Roanoke, Virginia at the time. This was like back in 2000.
Oh, wow. Really? Oh,
yeah. He ran for city council, got the most votes, and different last names, being Bill Carter. He has since passed, and I'm going to not do justice by spoiling his story and say we eventually built a relationship and ended in loving terms. But when we first met, it was like strangers. And
sure. Yeah. So why did you want to go to West Point? Because everybody I meet kids and meet people, probably because, like I say, his background in your family, probably, but why did you choose West Point?
Well, West Point was sort of the secondary in effect. So I had met somebody when I was in high school. I kind of didn't really know what I could achieve, and so I met somebody there was a guy who was like, I'm going to go into the Navy nuke program. This guy was going into the Navy nuke program. I was learning about like the military. So my first thing was that I viewed the military as this equal, like this opportunity that anybody could go after. Meritocracy, you go in and you can make it. It doesn't matter where you came from. You start out at a certain level and you can you climb the rank of whatever.
Right.
And so I had seen people go enlisted. And so I had my grandfather was on my mom's side had been Air Force enlisted. My grandfather, I later learned on my father's side, had been Navy enlisted and then commissioned as an officer, did 33 years. And so I wanted to go in the military because I viewed it as a sort of rite of passage. You know, you talk about the American dream. I think for anybody kind of sort of comes from, you know, I would have placed myself probably lower middle class or around lower middle class at the time as growing up. My dad was a construction worker. My mom was work catering.
Right.
And I just looked at the military as this opportunity that like kind of as a foundation. Mm-hmm. And so as I explored that and I continued with my academic pursuits, I was sort of informed that I got this like letter from West Point saying, hey, we'd like you to apply, you know, essentially. And so then it became the goal. And it was not a sure thing. I was waiting late until I want to say I was one of the, I don't want to say I was the last person to get a sort of offer of appointment, mm-hmm. but I certainly wasn't the first. And, but yeah, that's what kind of inspired me is that, you know, I never even heard of West Point until like school.
Until you got the letter, right?
Yeah. I didn't know. And it was this magical. It's sort of like in my mind, it was like this magical place that didn't exist anywhere. But then, you know, as I explored it, it's like an hour north of New York City and on the Hudson. So
I mean, because I know growing up, you know, even though my dad was Air Force, never really talked about it much. Mm-hmm. You know, my sister was in the Army, but you know, this place called West Point. I didn't know anything about West Point. You know, where's this? You know, the Naval Academy and all this stuff, you know. And then, you know, when I enlisted in '85 in the Navy, you know, I didn't know anything about the Naval Academy and, you know, in Maryland and whatnot, you know. So it's just those things where you know, if you're not in that arena, I guess you really don't know anything about it. And so a lot of kids actually do miss out on some opportunities because they just don't know about them.
Yeah.
You know?
No, I totally agree. And I think, you know, it's one of those things, given where I kind of come from. And I mean, I think the service academies should need to make sure they're doing a good job that way to make sure they're kind of, you know, getting, because, you know, and a lot of there's this sort of negative expectation. You see some folks who just, they don't know about it, or like they have negative, like they sort of reinforce like, oh, I can't do it because I don't know anybody that's done it. And,
you
know, I think the academies are pretty good about, because even if you can't, you know, for young people, even if you can't go straight in, you can actually go enlist and then there's a path that way. You go to the prep school and, you know, but you got to want to, I mean, I think they have to be wanting to do it for the right reasons, become an officer, lead soldiers or sailors or airmen.
Yeah. Correct.
Yeah.
Okay. So your time in Iraq, you said you did one tour. Is that what you said? One tour there?
Yeah. So, you know, kind of
at the beginning too, pretty much at the beginning.
Yeah. So I graduated in 2000, and then, you know, I went and sought out my father because I felt like I needed to reconcile that whole thing. I met my sister, and then she introduced me to through a couple of connections. I ended up meeting my wife through my sister, my now wife. And so there's a personal side of the story, because I think what's missing is sometimes you get like, okay, here's all the combat stuff. But I really focus on sort of fell in love and stuff like that. And we had, I mean, it was really fast, like 9/11, I signed in my unit. Lucy and I fall in love, and, you know, next thing you know, we're married and we have a baby on, you know, right before I deploy to Iraq.
Wow. Yeah.
And so, you know, this was January 2003. I left, said goodbye to my 1 month old. And I began the process of writing letters to both of them. And, you know, because when you're going off like that, you don't know if you're coming back. You don't.
That's right. That's right.
And it's a hard thing to deal with. And I was frankly depressed in Kuwait, waiting up. And eventually I got to a good mindset. I was like, I gotta put this aside, and then really focused on my men. And then we were like, I mean, we ended up had just a great platoon of guys. And we were task organized with 2 tanks, 2 Bradley vehicles, and a dismount squad. And so we were like first across the border with our lane. And then we hit, we fought in like, I want to say 2 or 3 major battles, one outside Najaf for this escarpment, it's like high ground.
Right.
The big one we fought that is kind of the focal point of the book, or the battle scenes, is for the bridge over the Euphrates River. And to get to Baghdad, you got to cross the Euphrates. And
Right.
the army crossed the Euphrates at this objective called Objective Peach. My platoon was the first mechanized platoon to go over. There was another, there was some sappers that went under and engineers that cut the wires and all that stuff. But we went over the bridge, guns blazing, and I tell that story. And then we were the first on the tarmac of Baghdad International Airport. And I tell that story as well. It's sort of, in some ways, uneventful compared to some of the other units that, there was a Medal of Honor recipient who died at the gate of Baghdad International. I think Paul Smith, Sergeant First Class. And so anyway, there's a lot in the combat stuff, and then I go into there's a lot there.
Yeah. I started. It's a good book, and and like we said, it's really a book of poetry.
Yeah,
it's a book of poetry,
mixed,
and you break it down. It's mixed, right? Go ahead.
Yeah. So what I do is I tell the story, and then there's certain times where like there's an emotional element, and then I plug there's a poem in there. Sometimes it's real short, and there's one that's like 4 sentences, 4 lines, the end of war. I don't have them. I could read one, but I'd have to dig it out. But the idea is the prose sort of tells the story. Where there's poems, it sort of conveys the emotion of that moment. Like it's because it's sort of more pure of that moment. The poems I wrote in West Point, largely untouched. You can see that there's a development, like from very basic, like to more developed. And then by the end of the book, you see the more thoughtful and more skillful ones. And the Downriver, the name of the book, is an actual poem. And the idea, it's something I wrote after I hit rock bottom. I wrote it for my wife, who I was estranged from at the time.
Okay.
And it's basically this idea that, we were together on going downriver, and then, there's it goes in, but now we're not on the same, side. We're on, and so I'm walking downriver trying to cross the water. And that's sort of the idea, is that I've got to work through my past. That's the downriver part, going back through everything in order to find the way forward. But I kind of jumped around the poems. There's, they deal with, there's Dream of Heaven. There's one that about my son, the birth of my son. There's one about a nightmare I had after I got back. And so it's meant to kind of cover what people have told me is a deeply personal memoir. Like they're not, some people are almost overwhelmed by, it wasn't written to be a book for other people to read. Okay. But I've decided to put it out there because I think it can help people.
Yeah. I mean, I think General Petraeus actually gave it a review. He said few memoirs achieved the level of literary depth and emotional resonance of Downriver. And that was from General Petraeus.
Yeah. Now I was grateful for that. And there's also a praise quote there from a Gold Star parent.
It's I think I'm sort of
Travis Patriquin's dad
now.
So there's a guy and his father. So this captain, Travis
Gary Patriquin, right, the Gold Star parent, yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So Travis Patriquin, I met this officer when I was in a basic course, and I tell a story about how I learned from him. He was prior service, and I was just a West Point butter bar, and I learned a lot from him. He loved soldiers, and I really gained an appreciation for his genuine leadership. And we didn't stay in touch, but he had a profound impact on me. And years later, in 2008, I heard his name so I went to after I got out of the Army, I went to work at Lehman Brothers after business school and so forth. And I was focused. I kind of detached from the military. I sort of stopped watching the casualty list. I stopped paying attention to the news. And
that's pretty depressing. It's pretty depressing to see that, right?
It is. So what happened in 2008 is I realized, you're part, and this is the integration piece. You come out of a culture that's so, I'd been like a rear detachment commander.
Mm-hmm. And
for the second tour, I stayed home, or I stayed back as I was waiting to get out of the military. And my unit within the first month lost two people, two soldiers, Landon Giles and Minsu Choi. And these two young men sacrificed for their country, and it's a very serious and emotional thing. Yeah. We welcomed the families. We did this tree ceremony. I had explained to them using a map where their sons died, because that was what my commanding officer wanted me to do.
Right. And
it's a very emotional thing, and I kind of go into that in the book, because as I left that's kind of how I ended up. The seriousness, and then you go off to business school in the civilian world, and it's totally detached.
Right. Totally right. It's totally different world. I mean, and people don't understand that. Being a civilian or civilian life, because like I said, I did 27 years in the Navy. So civilian life and military life is totally different, because you got this structure, you got this camaraderie, you got this family over here, and then you got this family over here. When you get out of the military, it's like, man, it's like you say, there's a void there. It seems like there's a void there. There's a reconstitution of life you got to deal with, go through and everything. And like I said, you were with Lehman Brothers, and then that collapses from under you.
Yeah, no. So what happens all at once? Lehman collapses. I find out this friend of mine had died 2 years before. In 2006, Travis Patchman.
December 6, 2006, I think it said in the book.
Yeah, he ended up going on, and he was part of the Sunni awakening. So after everything was falling apart in Iraq, he was this captain that kind of, it was big news back then. Mm-hmm. He came up with this plan of how to, he could speak Arabic, and he came up with this plan to turn the Sunni Iraqis against Al-Qaeda. And it was sort of very basic, but very shrewd. And the Al-Qaeda they took him out. And along with at least one other service member. When I learned of his death, I was proud, but also very sad. And then I also felt very guilty, because I had left military service, and so there's, in some ways, the manifestation of putting this book out there and putting my own money behind this. Frankly, I mean, I put my own money behind it, is a sort of an atone. I don't know if it's an atonement or some sort of way of showing respect and admiration for the sacrifice. But that had a profound impact on me. And that's part of PTSD, which is that survivor's guilt. And I was shaking and having, nightmares, and I couldn't function at work. As all this was, I didn't lose my job right away, but eventually I did. I got the layoff. Mm-hmm. And that was when I sort of put into focus what really mattered. But it's not a neat, tidy ending. I ended up, I talk about in the epilogue, my wife and I ended up separating, divorcing,
right?
But we became very good co-parents, and focused on the children. And what helped me, and this is kind of where I am now, my wife and I actually got back together in 2020 during COVID. We moved back in together, and she was a nurse, and my son, I realize now, retrospect, how invaluable that was, because I was able to help guide all my kids through that very directly, instead of being apart from them, which is such a, and Brandon, my son wrote the afterword, and he goes into this, is talking about the toll of broken families. And it's a very honest thing. And I wanted him to have that word, even, in some ways, it doesn't necessarily shine well on me, but it's an important lesson that you know, that the importance for, you know, the children, the impact on children that broken homes will have. And, you know, you can have regrets, but you try to do your best and focus on the forward. But so his ending is a powerful one to the book, I think. And he gets the last word, which is kind of the point, is that our lives as parents is prologue to the stories our children live out. And if we think about it, that's really the most important thing for me, at least from my perspective.
Yeah, that's what we do as parents. We want, you know, the best
Yeah.
for our kids. You know, when we pass on, that's, you know, that's the hope, you know, that we all have as parents. Hopefully, you know, that's what we should have. And you know, and you know, you gave him that, and he gave it back to you. So I think that's a very good thing. So you know, you mentioned that getting back together, you know, with your wife, or really just co-parenting, that helped you through. So if they weren't there, right? If they weren't there, because a lot of people in the service, they can't get back with their families, whether it's the wife or whether it's the guy, you know, and you know, and I think this is where a lot of our brothers and sisters end up committing suicide, because they don't have that, because they had it when they came back, it broke apart. That's just part of the you know, the demise, and then they don't have that chaos again, right? Because my next guest is going to talk about the loss of chaos, right? You know, because you have this, especially those you know, guys that have been downrange more than once, they have this loss of chaos when they get back. So if they weren't there for you, how do you think would this have turned out the same way for you if they weren't there? And I asked that for people that may not.
It would have been a different story, but I think, you know, when you say chaos, I think purpose. And, you know, I think for me, they were my purpose. I can't even imagine a story where they're, you know, it's I'm not me without them. So,
Right.
but yeah, you know, I think for anyone struggling, it's really to come down to what is your purpose. You know, I will say I've shared my story with a lot of folks. There's been you know, I've noticed it's interesting because a couple men about my age actually have come back to me and said, and really confided in me. And I don't want to give any of that away, but they've confided in me that they've gone through some really tough times recently. Right. And they appreciate that I put my story out there, because I think it makes them feel like they're not alone, and that they're not, because that's the thing. It's like there's a lot of, you know, not to segregate this by gender, but I think there's a lot of men who we have sort of that, hey, we're not allowed to kind of like open up to each other.
Right.
That
we got this. We got to be the tough one. You know, we can't, you know, cry. We can't show weakness. Right. You know,
there's a guy, anecdotally, there's someone I knew who committed suicide. It was a similar situation. I mean, had kids, but it's understanding that their purpose of existing, even if the kids aren't in their life day to day, that there's still a purpose for them. Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah, it's tough. I had two of my friends that I was with, they committed suicide. So, you know, that was very, very close with. So I understand how that goes and impact. I mean, because you never really know what's going on. So definitely, if you guys are having a problem, reach out to people. And Lieutenant General Ed Carden, he's Army, and he said, we all face trauma. How we confront it defines who we become. So I thought that was a pretty good saying in your book as well.
Yeah, and that's kind of, you know, that's the point. I mean, I'm trying to promote this idea of a warrior poet archetype, which is, I don't like viewing myself, you know, PTS whatever, as some sort of, I don't want people to be like, ooh, he's got, you know, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, I think there's deeper meaning and experience that I benefit from having been through that and translating it into something better, like more deeper. Like the connectivity I feel like I have with my brothers and sisters who served is such an invaluable thing. And, you know, so there's that, I don't know if it's possible to kind of continue that sort of, that narrative of post-traumatic growth. Others have talked about, General Mattis talked about it at one point. And because you know, destigmatizing things, but also just, you know, it doesn't need to be like oh, you're damaged or something. It's, it's everyone experiences trauma,
Right, of some sort. Yeah, of some sort. I mean, because you
Yeah.
have kids, honestly, that I read reports that kids in Chicago, they have PTSD from all of the violence,
Yeah.
in Chicago, things like that, so yeah, all of us go through some type of trauma sometime in our life, and definitely how we handle it makes it who we become. So I definitely love that. So where can people get your book? I'm gonna throw it up on the
Yeah.
screen here. I believe I can.
Well, the best place
Um,
for people is probably Amazon or Barnes and Noble. You can find Downriver Memoir of a Warrior Poet. Just search it. I also have a Facebook page, Downriver Memoir of a Warrior Poet. You can follow me. I kind of post things on there, things that I'm doing, webinars and all that, or op-eds and stuff. But yeah, that's where they can get it. Amazon.com, Barnes and Noble, Bookshop, Books a Million.
There it is. So what's your favorite part of the book? What was, if you had to go through the book and be like your favorite part that you wrote? What would that
well,
be?
that I wrote. See, that's a good point because my son.
Yeah, because I know your son's for. I already know your son's afterward is probably your number one.
Well, I have to say, it's the chapter that is about the bridge over Objective Peach, because I must have spent the most time kind of refining and reworking it, because it's the climax of the book, and it also there's a symbolic aspect of it too, because kind of going over the bridge and it's sort of like, now I've crossed the river in a sense, and there's a sort of separation of like the intense battle and all that stuff. But that would be I think my favorite battle chapter. But there's a lot of great chapters. I think it's.
No, there is. Like I said, I tapped into it, and it's one of those you can't put down books. To be honest, so no, that is awesome. Hey, man, but I appreciate you for coming in the Lion's Den and telling us about your story. Again, guys, go get the book. Go get the book, Downriver, Memoir of a Warrior Poet by Ryan McDermott. It's actually a great read, so you guys go check that out and get it from pretty much everywhere. Amazon's probably the best, he says. So if you want to get it from Amazon Books Million, you go get that. So, hey, man, where we wish you peace and love always. Thank you for your service, of course. And hopefully we'll catch you on another show soon.
Jerome, thanks for having me, and thank you for your service as well. Appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you, man. Have a good day now. Have a good weekend. Bye-bye. All right, guys, Ryan McDermott. There you go. Man, we got, there's a bunch of things we talk about going down range. With the next guest, I'm going to ask him about the unlooming, we went to go bomb the nuclear facilities, right? Have we had a show? Did we do a show after that? I think we may have done a little special or something. But it's sort of all these guys. I think I think if more guys and ladies, I say ladies too, that, hey, Susan over there, over there, and Carolyn, everybody, that if they wrote more, if they, I guess, wrote down their thoughts more, maybe it may help. But you definitely have to have that support. You definitely have to have that support system, for these guys. And hey, Jackie, over there on Rumble Land, we appreciate you. We appreciate you. But man, I'm going back and forth, trying to get some news on here, because this is pretty close to where I live. It's about 8 hours really away, up in Coeur d'Alene. But that is some BS, man. That is some BS. But what I'm going to do, I'm going to jump to my other sponsor before my new sponsor. I had the guest on last week. Tim Keller was on last week, and I'm actually going to share this screen here because I think this is very, very important. I actually had a couple of people call me about it and whatnot. But this diabetes thing, man. I mean, because we're definitely in a epidemic, and our country's in definitely a diabetes epidemic caused by the addition of processed foods such as high fructose corn syrup, refined sugar, refined wheat into our diets many, many years ago. I think this is a plan to make people sick. They knew this. It's just crazy how, I have a friend. I'm not going to mention his name, but he's a supervisor at a food processing plant, right? We were talking, and unfortunately, his brother, I talked to him after this. His brother had to have his foot amputated from diabetes, and he has diabetes. And we talked about it, and he said, "Man," he said, "Dude, you wouldn't believe the chemicals that we put in our food." I'm like, "No, I will believe it because I try to speak out on it, But he works at this plant, and he tells me about this stuff, man, and it's just ridiculous. They put this stuff in our food to make us and keep us sick. That's why I take no medications. I try to shop and I don't buy anything with high fructose corn syrup in it. I try not to eat anything with refined sugar, even though sometimes I'm addicted to ice cream, but it got to have real sugar. No, I'm just, but I'm an ice cream junkie, man. That's like my, that's my fix, man, ice cream. But the American Diabetes Association states it is a nationwide epidemic that affects over 38 million people. 38 million people in the country, y'all. And say, so who is U.S. Diabetes Care and what do we do? That's what it says. U.S. Diabetes Care is a mission-driven health education company focused on ending the diabetes epidemic in America, not by prescribing more medications, but teaching people how to reverse their condition through proven science-based lifestyle medicine. We don't sell a product, we teach a process. Our mission is to educate, empower, and transform lives of helping individuals reverse prediabetes, type 2, type 3. And what we talked about with the type 3 diabetes, that's pre-dementia is what they're coming up with, right? That's the pre-dementia, and the dementia is the type 3 diabetes, gestational diabetes, and insulin resistance. Not just manage them, but reverse them. Over 90% of the people who complete the program show measurable improvements, and many reverse their condition entirely. Unlike most diabetes programs that focus on disease management, we focus on reversal, and that's Dr. Daniel Castro, the medical director for Diabetes Care, up on the screen. We don't promote a future of lifelong medications, blood sugar monitoring, and constant doctor visits. We help people treat the root cause, not just the symptoms, so they can take back control of their health. America is in a diabetes crisis. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to drop this link in the chat. If you're in Getter, if you're on Rumble, I'm going to try to drop it there, and and every place else, YouTube. So I'm going to drop this link in the chat. You guys just go check it out. And hey, you might have a family, may not be you, but you might have a family member. You may have wait a minute. That's not it. You may have a family member. You may have, what did I do? Boom. I'll put it up here in a minute. I lost it. But you may have a family member or even a friend that need this help, and may not be into the medicines, don't want to take the insulin, don't want to take the shots, don't want to do that stuff. So we're going to do that, and just check it out, and have, you send them this link and say, hey, I just want you to go read something, and let them, check it out on their own. You know what I mean? All right. So I got something special though, coming up on Wednesday. Okay. I'm going to do a special live broadcast. I thought about pre-taping it, and I still may pre-tape it because it's going to be at 9:00 in the morning Eastern. No, 9:00 in the morning. It's going to be 11 o'clock. I believe 11 o'clock in the morning Eastern Standard Time, because I'm going to do it 9:00 in the morning. My time, that's 6 p.m. Israeli time. And what I'm going to have a live with Francois Michael. I had her on the show about 3 years ago. Francois Michael. She's the author of Corona Hoax, the book. And she's going to be here live. I'm going to have her here live. And so we're going to talk about what's going on in Israel. And you won't see this on any other show. So we're going to do it live. It's going to be Wednesday morning, 11 a.m. Eastern Standard Time is when I'm going to do the show. So that's going to be 9 a.m. here. So it's going to be live. So I know most of you will probably be at work and you won't be able to watch the show. But I thought, just in case you want to ask her questions, and she's She's fire, man. And so because we get all of this, here, if you talk about negative about Netanyahu, about Israel, you're gonna be called a, anti, Semitic person, or you just don't like, you hate Israel. I've had people tell me, man, you just hate Israel. No, I don't, man. I hate Netanyahu and what he's doing. So you're going to get a perspective from someone that lives there, that's Israeli, you know, um, that's there. So I think that's going to be important. I think that's going to be really, really cool to have her here. We're just working out the times and stuff like that. But I'm going to start promoting it tomorrow and Tuesday. And so Wednesday we're going to have live with Francois Mikael is her name, and straight from Israel. So you guys going to hear it from her. Whatever she says, we're going to talk about it all. We're going to talk about it all. What's going on? And I'll tell you this, I'll tell you, she's not a Netanyahu fan. 74% of the people in Israel are not yet Netanyahu fans. However, if you say that, right? If you say that here in the United States, man, I'm on the side of the 74 people in Israel, and I do not like what Netanyahu and the government and the military and the government of Israel is doing. No, you're anti-Semitic. You hate Israel. I'm like, nah, man, I'm with the 74% in Israel, man. I mean, it's a shame how you can't do that here, but she's going to explain that. She's going to explain why it's like that, because it's like that there too. It's like that there too. It's going to be similar, right? She's going to get into the globalists and how, and one of the things here's one of the things, and I don't want to spoil the show, but it's one of the things that she told me today, and I'm actually going to read it. I'm actually going to read it verbatim, right? And and she says here, because we're going back and forth today. She said the deep state. You guys heard that term before, right? And this is in Israeli. Come on, man. The deep state runs the whole area. The Israeli government and top officials work together with the heads of the Arab countries. They are all servants of the globalists who sacrifice the population and soldiers. That's from her. That's from her. That's one of the things that, I try to get people. When I tell people that Hamas and now Abu Shabaab is working for the Israeli government, people think I'm crazy. You don't know what you're talking about, man. Hamas hides below the hospitals and blah, blah. How come Hamas never die, man? They've been fighting, going after Hamas. How come Hamas never get killed? They really don't. You read an article about about someone. Yeah, that may be someone they threw to them, but Hamas never really get killed, man. And so now they have this group. And I said this, and I've got attacked viciously for this too, that Abu Shabaab is now working for the Israeli government supposedly against Hamas. So this is another Frankenstein that they're creating, by the way, right? A totally another Frankenstein. So it's going to be interesting that it's going to be very interesting that and she said this did not start now. This didn't start now, and that's what I tell people. You guys got to look at the history. You guys have to look at the history. She's going to bring a spiritual perspective, and she's going to bring a perspective of someone that's there. And she says, I can substantiate everything I claim, everything. So, man, you guys can't miss this show. You guys tune in wherever you are. Of course, it's going to be recorded. You guys have to go back and watch it and share this show out, because she says in Israel too, this is another thing I say, right? Israel too, most people do not accept this perspective because it is so frightening and revolting. So many have lost their lives for so many years. Is that not the same thing that we talk about here on the show? Is that not the same thing we talk about on the show? Because people don't want to face it, because it's frightening that your own government is doing this to set up people to kill people in the population, right? And so I said, well, I don't want to get you in any kind of trouble. But she said, no, thanks. But people have to know. People have to know the truth because it's happening here, it's happening everywhere, although on a lesser scale with less intensity. When we know, we don't get sucked into the drama of things. And that's the whole thing, man. It's about being aware, about being aware, you know. And when she says they want us to feel small and frightened, they want us to feel helpless and lost. When you know who runs the show, you get back your strength and your inner sovereignty equals you change your energy. You move the same game to a different plane where you have the power, the energetic plane. Einstein said energy governs matter. So that's what I'm going to have on Wednesday, y'all. So it's going to be a very, very interesting show. Very, very interesting show. So my next guest I'm going to bring up here in a second. His name is Tyler Gray. Tyler Gray he's an American actor, Hollywood producer, and former Army Ranger and Delta Force operator. As a former 1st Special Forces Operational Detachment Delta Force operator and sniper qualified Army Ranger, his military career included 4 combat deployments in Afghanistan and Iraq before it was abruptly cut short due to severe injury sustained from explosion during a combat operation in Baghdad in 2005. My previous guest was there in 2003, and Tyler was there in 2005. So after transitioning into the entertainment industry, I'm gonna have to ask him about that, man. How did you do that, man? So Gray quickly became recognized for his work on SEAL Team 2017, as well as his contributions to Suicidal Squad in 2016, and in the Selection Special Operations Equipment 2016. His real life military expertise adds depth and authenticity to these productions, making him a respected figure both on and off the screen. So currently, Gray is focusing on writing and public speaking, as well as leveraging his experience in the world of film to produce authentic action movies. His mission is to shed light on the unique challenges faced by combat veterans. By sharing his personal journey, he aims to educate, inspire, and provide support to fellow warriors navigating the complexities of post-combat life. So, welcome to the stage. Welcome to Lion's Den, Tyler Gray. Hey, man, how you doing, brother? I think you're locked. You're frozen. Tyler's frozen. You might have to go out and come back in, bro. If you can hear me. But his book, Forged in Chaos, okay, he has a book. It's called Forged in Chaos. And while he's trying to get back in, I'll Tyler, go out and come back in. You're frozen. Maybe they don't want Tyler to talk. That happens sometimes here, right? And exactly, Carolyn said exactly. America's in that same damn mud puddle. He said, I'll definitely be there. I know Carolyn will be there. So his book. Okay, so let me just tell you about his book. I think he's back. Hold up.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay, now, man. Hey, man.
Yeah,
sometimes you just freeze up. Sometimes, man, the guys just freeze you. They don't want you to be here, man. So welcome to the show, man. And welcome.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Okay, so I gave you a small introduction, read a little bit about you. So, but I let people introduce themselves, tell people about who they are, because you can, introduce yourself and tell people who you are better than I can. So go ahead and take the floor, brother.
Yeah, well, I was actually a pretty comprehensive introduction, but really for me, I was lucky enough to have the career I did in the military. I feel very fortunate to be able to go to the units I did and be able to deploy in the manners I did, and even the blast injury that put me out of the military that I was medically retired for. Ultimately, for me, that was also a blessing, because the lessons that I learned from going through that process and basically everything that it taught me about myself is really what allowed me to put together all of the lessons I learned and put it into this upcoming book that really I was in the dark for a long time, and I wrote this book to hopefully be a light to people that are currently in the dark like I was.
Mm-hmm. And that seems to be, that's one of the things that my previous guest said. Ryan McDermott, he wrote the book to help others because he hit rock bottom, from serving over in Iraq as well. Let me ask you a question, real quick. What do you think? What did you think when you first heard? Because you've been there, yeah, and you know what it's like. A lot of people, they armchair quarterback. You know, I've been there. You know, they armchair quarterback. They sit back and say, "Yeah, go bomb, bomb, bomb." Blah, blah. What did you think about the first thing that came to your mind when President Trump bombed the nuclear facilities in Iraq? Was this like a rah-rah moment, or did you think, man, this is going to lead to boots on the ground? You know, what exactly was your thoughts on that?
No, that's a good question, and you know, I'm glad you asked it because you know, I did some videos on my YouTube before we did anything when Israel was you know bombing Iraq, or sorry, Iran, and I put out a couple of videos just based on you know what I thought was going to happen, and I said before we struck it that I was pretty confident that we were going to bomb you know the nuclear sites, specifically Fordo, just because.
Uh-oh.
And so I expected that to happen. It did happen. And, you know, it's hard for me because on one hand, I do agree with the decision and I think it was a good decision. On the other hand, as you said, you know, having fought in 2 wars, I am absolutely not a person who looks at war lightly. You know,
Right,
my life
exactly.
changed, you know, my life changed forever because of it. And, you know, I think about it every day to some degree, you know, when I use my arm in any way. And so it's not a light thing, making the decision to do anything, quite honestly, whether it's boots on the ground or whether it's dropping bombs. At the
Right.
end of the day, you know, there's no war, as I like to say, there's no way to do war clean. It's a dirty
Right.
business and it's dirty no matter how you look at it. So on one hand, I am absolutely a person who does not want the US to get involved in another forever war. I do not want, you know, boots on the ground like we had in Afghanistan, especially the way that ended, nor really even Iraq, even though it was very different in a lot of ways. But at the end of the day, I don't want those things. And yet I did agree with, you know, the way this was done. It was done with no boots on the ground. It was also done, I haven't heard Iran talk of a civilian casualty from the US's involvement.
Right.
I mean, I haven't heard it mentioned. So, um, for me, I think it was the right decision. That being said, I'm definitely a person that doesn't just go, yeah, yeah, bomb them, bomb them, bomb them, like you said,
Right.
because I know, you know, I've done assessments after a bomb was dropped on a place, and it's, you know, it's one thing to see it on TV. It's one thing to drop it probably from the air. It's a whole nother thing to walk through that location on the ground.
Yeah, the
And
aftermath. Yeah, the aftermath
it's
of
yeah, a damage assessment of you know any bombing or missile whatever aftermath is pretty. It'll change the way you see it. Let me just put it that way. So
right.
I think that's a good question, and I think you know there needs to be always a balance between uh, you know the risks versus the rewards of any
Yeah.
involvement in anything for that matter.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. You know, and that's one of the things that that I try to tell people. It's different if you were there, right? You know, you can
Yeah,
armchair quarterback, you can, have your pom poms out, but until you're there, until you're, downrange and that happens, and like so you have to do the aftermath assessment, or actually they're coming at you, you know,
yeah, yeah,
you just can't, sit here and rah rah. Like I say, I agree. I was against it really, myself,
yeah.
just to get my personal perspective because, from what my assessment. Of course, I don't have everything. I don't have,
Oh yeah,
the
and neither
breaches
do
and
I.
stuff like
Obviously, yeah,
that. Yeah, yeah. But I just didn't think it was necessary because of what's going on. Because I'm just one of those things where I don't think we should be pulled in any more foreign wars, man. I think we've had enough, for probably a lifetime, unless we're being physically attacked and physically, I think, threatened, then I don't think we should be. That's just my take on it, though. But
yeah. No, and I mean that's you know that's absolutely a valid take. I mean anyone's take is valid, obviously, in their own opinion. But I kind of defer to what you said as well. Is you know my my assumption is, I mean, let's be honest, that was very politically risky for Trump. It was a very, very politically risky decision.
right,
And I assume, again, I don't know, but I assume that decision was made as risky as it was because of what he knew or had very good reason to believe. The other thing I will mention, probably I should mention this because it's kind of what I based my decision to support the strikes on, and that is prior to our strikes. If you read or listen or look into it, prior to our strikes, when Israel was doing their thing in Iran, their intel was spot on, shockingly good, able to target individuals, the nuclear scientists from the regime, the specific leaders of, Quds Force and different parts of the Iranian military and special operations piece. So their intel was so good targeting those people. Their intel was so good targeting sites. I mean, they were hitting a building, I think in Tehran, where they took out like the one floor and the one room where the people were, and didn't really affect much of the rest of the building. So, and I know how intel works, and all of our missions that I did were based on pretty serious intel. And so based on how good that was that I saw, I assumed they had that good of intel for, the claims that they were making in response to how close they were to, some sort of nuclear device. So that's what I actually based my support on.
Right. Yeah, and that's clean. That that's good too. In your book, it's wait a minute. Hold on, I'm sorry.
Forged in Chaos.
Forged in Chaos. There it is, Forged in Chaos. And so you introduce this concept of LTSD. And so tell people what LTSD is and how does it differ from the traditional PTSD, and why is this a crucial distinction for warriors?
Great question. So, I was told, I'll kind of go a little kind of historical on it because how I came up with it.
Yeah, and that's fine. You can just tell the story, man. We're an hour, so you can do your thing.
So I was told many times that, you have PTSD, and I heard it so many times. It was the diagnosis, whether it was the VA or another therapist, etc. And, I got to the point where I said, okay, what exactly? Look, I've seen First Blood. I saw all the Rambos as a kid. I'm like,
Right.
I have an idea. PTSD is, generally, but I was asking, look, from your diagnosis, it's a diagnosis, it's a psychiatric, for lack of a better term, diagnosis, a mental diagnosis. And so I'm like, what is it? Not what I think it is in the movies. What is it that you're, what is it to you? What is it clinically, for lack of a better term? Right. And she gave me all this information, and I went, okay. And I really listened intently. And what I came to is I said, look, I'm telling you what it feels like, and you're telling me what you think. You're telling me what it should feel like, and I'm telling you what it actually feels like. And I was like, the PTSD, this, what you're telling me, all the signs. And so I'm not saying I don't have a problem. I do. I'm in here, I'm talking to you, but you're giving me a diagnosis that just doesn't honestly fit with the way I feel. And that kind of went back and forth, and it got to a point where I said, she just wasn't really listening to my opinion on it. And I said, look, do you have PTSD? She said, no. And I said, well, then why should I listen to you? Like,
right.
What do you know about it? I mean,
yeah, it's like going to a family counselor or a family counselor, for your children, and the counselor don't have kids. It's like, why are you even listening to them?
There you go.
Right?
Yeah, there you go. Well, I've read a lot of books, and any parent would be like, that has not, you read a lot of books. Okay, so that's like kids, hell no. So I just said, well, then, what do you know about it? And look, was it a, kind of an asshole thing? Absolutely. I admit that, but frustrated. And so I left, and I basically made a vow with myself that I was going to figure out I was going to figure out a way to explain what I felt like, what it actually felt like, what I was actually experiencing. And then a event happened to me, which it's a long story. I go in detail, obviously, in the book, but an event happened to me, and it was so odd. My behavior, I should say, was so odd. It's so out of place and so not normal that I had to come up with a way to explain why I did what I did. And LTSD was that explanation. So what does it mean? So PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, we all know what it stands for, right? Right. If you think about it, though, post-traumatic stress disorder, that basically PTSD assumes a pre-traumatic stress baseline.
Right.
You can't have post-traumatic stress unless you had a pre-traumatic stress baseline. And then the traumatic stress is what causes the PTSD, right? And
Right.
what I figured out about myself and what I've figured out about a lot of veterans and first responders is that for many, many of us, we never had a pre-traumatic stress baseline. For the vast majority of us, our childhood, it was chaotic. I don't use the word traumatic because trauma and chaos are two very different things. And a lot of people don't perceive, they'll say, oh, my childhood wasn't traumatic. But again, that's, in my experience, that's through the lens of an adult looking at a child's, early life.
Right. Not the lens. Not the kid at the time, because I can remember getting my ass whooped. I'm like, that's pretty traumatic at the time. But now it's like, that shit wasn't so bad.
It was good. I deserved it. But at the time, children's view of trauma or chaos, and actually, let me say it differently. The reason the book's called Forged in Chaos is because the commonality I see among so many veterans and first responders is that fundamental baseline of chaos. And make no mistake, to a child, chaos is traumatic. I had a person tell me, oh, I didn't have a traumatic childhood, but I was seeing all the signs and symptoms of, this chaos reaction. And I said, did you move as a kid? Oh yeah, we moved every 6 months.
That's
dude,
traumatic.
that's right down the chaos checklist. That's traumatic for a child, right?
Traumatic, yeah.
That's absolutely traumatic, no question about it. But
changing
his parents
schools,
loved him.
changing friends, yeah, man, that's traumatic.
But he didn't see it as traumatic because he had loving parents. And I'm like, yes, your parents loved you, I have no doubt, but those are two very different things. And so what I realized is that, and what I saw is, I figured out that for me, chaos is my default state. Chaos is my homeostasis. Because as a child, when you're a child growing up in an environment, your brain has to rewire itself to survive. So a child growing up in chaos, your brain rewires itself to make chaos its default state or homeostasis. It's your comfort zone. So what happens is you are able to be calm when the environment is absolutely chaotic for the rest of your life. When the environment, you're calm, chill as a cucumber. But when the environment becomes chill and calm, the chaos goes into your mind because that's what you're used to. And so how do you calm yourself? I calm myself by creating, for many years, by creating chaos in the environment. And once I had created it, my nervous system reset. I was back to homeostasis and I was calm. And so what LTSD stands for is I don't have post-traumatic stress disorder. I have lack of traumatic stress disorder. I need traumatic stress in the environment to feel calm because that's what I'm used to. And there's a lot of ramifications from this, but it's really an inverse way to explain something that is so common. And think about it this way. If we didn't have that fundamental baseline, a normal person is just fundamentally not wired to run into a burning building, not wired to run into a building where people are shooting out of. Like, that's just not normal. Or to go and see someone that got hit in a car accident, extract them from the car, give CPR, that's crazy. That's chaos. And so we have that ability based on our childhood. What I believe happens is that pushes us into those jobs because we're seeking an outlet, we're seeking value, and we're seeking a job that we know that we are, or that we feel that we are designed for. It's our calling. And so that's really a quick definition of LTSD.
Yeah. So how do you create the chaos, let's say in your life now, to combat, and get back into your homeostasis? How do you do that? And how would someone, do that? But go ahead. Uh-oh, you get locked up again. He's frozen again. Hold on.
There we go. Okay. When someone, where was that? When someone basically, before with PTSD is the diagnosis, somebody's doing something like, let's say, drinking and driving, or, or any addiction for that matter. or, buying a motorcycle and riding 120 miles an hour, at night, like I was for years. When it's PTSD, you do those things and people just go, yeah, he's crazy. He's got PTSD. He's doing crazy stuff. Yeah, because he's got PTSD. But what does it really mean? Why are you doing it? Why are you doing what you're doing? Under the PTSD label, it's just, it's just crazy stuff. There is no real rhyme or reason for the why. And what I found with the LTSD concept, the reason I came up with it is because once you see those behaviors as what they are, which is creating chaos to go back to your mental state of homeostasis. So the next time you want to create chaos, or the next time you're about to do something that creates chaos, once you understand why, the mechanism of why you're doing it, I'm doing it to calm myself, then it gives you some agency of choice where you go, oh man, I know why I'm doing what I'm doing. Things are going good. Everything is going absolutely great in your life. And there's a moment where you just everything's going good. It hits you. And then you just have this inherent need to destroy it or create destruction or mess it up, or any self-destructive impulse. That once you understand the why, it really gives you a lot of awareness and the ability to change it, rather than just going, it's just a side effect of PTSD. I do crazy shit. It's very different. And so for me, and what I've seen with other people, is it helps them really understand the why. And it gives them the ability to then choose to not do those behaviors.
Right. Oh man, that's cool. So in your book, you describe let's say this warrior and the destroyer personas. So how can veterans identify when the destroyer is taking control, and what's the first step in reclaiming their warrior, I guess, identity?
Hope I didn't lose.
Now you're still there. I see you.
I'm sorry. Yeah, I broke up on the last part. What was can you restate that? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Sorry.
I said you described the split between the warrior and the destroyer personas. How can veterans identify when the destroyer is taking control, and what's the first step in trying to reclaim that warrior identity?
So a great way to explain it is, first of all, just say very quickly, where did the warrior and destroyer come from? Well, the warrior and destroyer, the way I explain it is, when you have that chaotic childhood, that leads to the child knows that that's not a good environment. Children are egocentric, so they think they are responsible for the environment around them. So when the environment is chaotic and bad, they see themselves as a cause of it. The environment's bad, therefore I must be bad. And so they internalize what is really something external, and that leads to a lack of self-worth, a lack of value, and fear that they have none. And so the warrior is the innate you. It's the innate you that existed before, it's you, at birth, before anything happened to you. The destroyer is created from that chaos in order to insulate and protect you. So you need to get your needs met, and it's crazy and it's chaotic. So you build this other character to protect yourself and insulate yourself from that. I call it the destroyer. And so the destroyer, the warrior and the destroyer, one is innately good, the warrior. The destroyer is not so good. The destroyer does all the things that, quite frankly, are compartmentalized, that you have the destroyer do, so you can detach from it and feel like it's not really you. It's just this compartmentalized piece. So the destroyer is fundamentally not a very good person, manipulating, lying, compartmentalization. It's basically a split of authenticity, for lack of a better term. And so the war within that, I experienced, and I think a lot of people experience, I explain as a war between the warrior, innately good, and the destroyer, innately bad. And the conflict is between which one is really me. Which one am I? Who is which one of these is actually me? Which is really, am I fundamentally good or am I bad? And there's evidence for both. There's evidence for good and there's evidence for bad. And so that confusion and the friction that war causes can really spin out of control and cause people to really self-destruct. And so the way that you the way I explain it, it was finally, once I understood what I just, explained very briefly, I explained it much better in the book, but what I explained very briefly, once you understand that where the two sides in your mind comes from, right? Everyone's got the angel and the demon, right? We all know that to some
You got
degree.
the angel
But
on
once
his
you,
shoulder. Yeah,
yeah, exactly.
gotcha.
Everyone, that's a cliche for a reason. And so once people understand really where it came from, why it was created, and all those different things, again, it gives you some understanding of the real you is the warrior. The destroyer is not the real you. That is the you that trauma forced you to create to protect yourself. And so the way to get back to your warrior, the best way, and there's many ways, and I talk about them in the book, but the key way I believe is to focus on authenticity. Get back to the absolute version of yourself that is absolutely real, authentic, and really is completely in tune with who you innately are. So many people try and, especially who have this baseline, try and show, for lack of a better term, try and portray and act like another character to try and get approval, or to try and make things easier, or to do all these different things. The way to get back to the warrior and really and really overcome that internal conflict is to focus on who is the absolute real me. And that kind of leads into, by the way, identity, which I think all veterans, have some degree of understanding. When they got out, a lot of veterans say, I know I did, that, I lost my identity when I got out of the military.
Oh, right. I sort of said that too, after being in for 27 years, because your whole life changes. Because some people are really, like leaders of platoons, and they were supervisors, and basically,
Yep.
they ran the show. Basically, like I was a chief, we ran the show. And the
Yep.
Navy, and then getting out of the Navy and maybe having to work for somebody, and you're not in control. You don't have that control. You're not the boss. And that's like a loss of identity. And a lot of us go through that.
Absolutely. And I, for many years, said, oh, I when I got out of the military, I lost my identity. I lost in the last, I don't know, 2, maybe 3 years, that I realized that wasn't actually true.
Right.
And I don't
Right.
think it's true for any of us. And here's what I mean by it.
Absolutely.
I don't think we lost our identity. I think that we never had a strong one to begin with. And the reason I say that is because, think of it this way. If you truly had an individualistic, truly strong identity, who you were, and it was very rock solid, your job would have never become your identity to begin with.
Right.
The fact that the job became your identity means you couldn't have had that strong of one before you did the job. And so I think we're not really struggling with loss of identity. I personally discovered that I was struggling with the lack of ever even really creating one. Because at the end of the day, based on how I grew up, I didn't really know who I was, because I was always trying to be what gave me the acceptance I was looking for my whole life.
And that happens, I would say, because a lot of people, they go into the military at a young age, 18 years old.
Absolutely. Yeah,
you don't know
absolutely.
who the hell you are at 18 years old, and then you end up spending 20 years. And so I think the longer you stay in, the worse,
100%.
the worse it becomes on you,
100%.
because you mentioned that, to make someone that's exceptional in combat, then they get out and become destructive in life. And so they try to, recontextualize. So which trait, I guess, was most challenging for you personally to recontextualize once you got out?
I mean, probably, well, I'll tell you what, I mean, I could say identity, I could say purpose, I could say those things. And don't get me wrong, those were big and critical and very difficult and took a lot of time.
Right.
But ultimately, for me, what I think is the core, for lack of a better term, disease in the veteran community is self-worth. I think a lot of veterans suffer, and let me be clear, I think a lot of veterans suffer from low self-worth and don't realize it. And I can say for myself, I didn't even know really what self-worth was, self-love, self-worth. I didn't, I mean, yeah, people, I didn't really understand that some people, got this innate worth and value from childhood, from the way their parents raised them and took care of them and all these things. I didn't know that was a thing. And so as a child, I thought all of it came from things that were external. So I thought worth came from, I saw kids and I was like, why do they have so much confidence, and why do they value themselves so much? And I would watch them and I would study them, and I would always find something that they had externally that I was like, oh, it's based on that. Whether they were, popular, had, all the girls were chasing them. They were good looking. They were super athletic. Their parents were rich. They had cool clothes, cool pair of shoes, whatever it was. I was always looking at them, and I was able to find those external things that I thought that their worth was based on. And it wasn't until, again, recently, back at least the kids I knew, pretty well, that I realized, oh my God, I know that kid's parents. No, his parents really loved him and took care of him and nurtured him and told him he was great and amazing. That's where that came from. But I couldn't even conceive of that for decades. And so I think that's a huge, huge, huge issue in the veteran community. And I can kind of prove it in this way. No one, I don't care, you can have 8 PhDs, I don't give a shit. No one can tell me that anyone is committing suicide that truly values themselves. Hell no, ain't happening.
No, absolutely
not possible. It's not. It's not only possible, a little possible. To take your own life, you have to value yourself so little that you're able to do that. No one who truly values themselves, I believe, could do something like that. And so I think it's, quite frankly, pretty obvious, now, obviously, through the lens of hindsight, that there's a real, affliction in the veteran community. And I think self-worth is a big part of that. And, it all interrelates from the chaotic childhood.
You froze up again.
Of it that I really laid out.
So go back to what's a chaotic childhood, because
so I really
froze up a little bit. Go ahead.
Yeah. So, it's all interrelated from, the chaotic childhood, the, lack of self-worth, the creation of the warrior and destroyer, or really the creation of the destroyer. All of it's interrelated, and it's a cluster of factors that I lay out, really, for lack of a better term, step by step in my book. And the way the book is laid out, it's my story. It's an autobiography for the first, 3/4 of it. And then the last fourth is really, for lack of a better term, like an AAR, which is, okay, you've read my story, you've read all the things that I've struggled with, and, the different aha moments and epiphanies I had. And then I put them all together, that kind of, I'm like, okay, this was the problem for me. And then this is how I went about solving it step by step. And I really didn't want to write a book that had my story in it, which is great, don't get me wrong, but I didn't want to put my story and my problems, or the problems I was discovering in the community, without putting some solutions in there as well.
Right.
Awareness is great, don't get me wrong, but at a certain point, too much awareness with no solutions just makes the problem feel like it's unfixable, and people just start tuning out. So I really wanted to put the solutions that had worked for me in there, and hopefully it'll work for others.
Yeah. And so how can family members, because a lot of family members, they're dealing with this, how can they recognize this pattern and provide meaningful support for someone going through this? And it may not even be a veteran, because like I mentioned to the last guest, we have kids in, let's say, Chicago, for example, they're, having this
100%,
PTSD type thing, they, have it. Everything that you described, this is happening to them because of their environment. So how can we recognize
100%. So first of all, I want
I locked up again. All right, so we're gonna go back to that question when he gets back. He'll be back. He'll be back. So I tell you what, let me until he comes back, I'm gonna pop him out. Then he'll pop back in a minute. Okay, there he is.
Drop. Oh,
all right, you're back. Okay, so
yeah.
so
Man,
he
this
went
is,
back. So the kids, yeah, that's okay. It happens. But go ahead.
Oh, yeah. So
About the kid.
I started writing it, for veterans because that was my experience, and then I started seeing, the pattern was the exact same for first responders. So then I was like, oh,
Right.
this applies here. Really zeroing in on what it was, we realized, no, this applies to any and everyone that have any serious. I also want to be clear, PTSD is event focused. It is focused and must be diagnosed for one event. What that means is it's not really honestly diagnosable for an environment. They did an adaptation.
He'll be back. Right. So gee, we got the connection issue going up. This is what happens when we have a live show. And no, I'm not editing it. I'm not gonna splice it. Not gonna put it back together. We'll wait for Tyler to get back in. But what we're talking about, let's say LTSD and PTSD. And here on the show today with Tyler Gray in his book, Forged in Chaos. I think you may have to go out and come back in. Is what you may have to do. Okay, so, and you guys may know someone that is suffering from this, type of a deal. Like you said, it's sort of a split thing. He popped out. He's gonna come back in a minute. All right, we got him back on audio at least.
Actually, it should. Why is it not?
Yeah, I don't have the camera, the video.
Yeah, why? Oh, here it is. Okay.
Okay, there you go.
I don't know why it shut it off. Geez, sorry. Okay, so back to my point. It's one of those things where it applies to anyone with a chaotic childhood or really that had a long-term environment that was chaotic, or again we can use the word traumatic, but it really applies to obviously a huge amount of people. And I'm very, very confident that anyone who's gone through something like that will read the pattern in this book and see similarities in their own life. Which I went on a very, large podcast and kind of put my childhood story out there. And I got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of messages from veterans and first responders that were like, dude, your childhood story isn't similar to mine. It's the exact same. And that's, that was a couple of years ago. That was when I really knew I was on the right track with this this pattern and this cluster of things that kind of come together to create this overall mold that I'm seeing.
Okay. Well, since you mentioned it and got so many messages about it, if you want to, let's talk about your childhood. Let's go back.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure some people in my audience may feel the same way as well. So let's go ahead and let's talk about your childhood. Where you want to begin?
Yeah, I mean, for me, again, and I want to be very clear here. I am not, I don't want to, again, I think there's a very difficult balance, or not balance, but when people talk about their childhoods, it's one of those things where we all know of people that had, childhoods infinitely worse than ours. And I'm sure we all know of people that had ones that were much better. And so there's this tendency to be like, oh, no, my childhood was fine, at least that I've experienced, because, we all know, kids that had really serious, just absolutely insane childhoods.
Yeah. I mean, even in your family, because I know some of my family members that had some awful, awful childhoods, compared to mine. So yeah. So,
and what took me time to realize is, as a child, it really doesn't matter what your awareness was of other people's childhoods. All that matters is how yours felt to you at the time.
Right.
And that's something we all have to realize. So for me, my childhood was very chaotic. My dad was an alcoholic. He was a heavy equipment mechanic, and pretty much I almost never saw him. When I did see him, he was generally passed out, or when he wasn't passed out, he was pretty much angry to some degree all the time. And for me, my brother was absolute maniac growing up. He would wake up screaming, just scream for hours. It was very hard to grow up with. And so, with my brother causing really a ton of conflict in the family, my parents were arguing all the time. So for me, I kind of fell into the role of being the good kid and really kind of being invisible, for lack of a better term. So, I tried to leave the house as much as I could just to get away from, what was going on there. And so I spent quite a lot of time alone. And again, that led to really a complete lack of, value and self-worth. And as a kid, I mean, I was actually, looking back now, I was, tall. I was, not a bad looking kid. I was actually a relatively good looking kid. I was relatively in good athletic shape. But what's crazy, and I was smart, like I should have been confident, but confidence doesn't come from those things. And so as a child, I had absolutely no confidence at all. I couldn't have been less confident. And as a unconfident child, I think we all know what happens to children that have no confidence. And that is they get picked on, they get beat up, they get made fun of, they're always the joke, they're not getting picked, all those different things, that was my childhood. And so, for me, it really led to a feeling of that I was different, that I didn't belong, that I didn't fit in, but also even deeper than that I was fundamentally going to be alone, that I was unlovable, that I was unwanted, all those different things. And I really kept that pattern for, I don't know, probably at least till I probably hit puberty. I mean, I detail it in the book, but I literally wet the bed pretty much probably every night till I was a teen. That's how much anxiety I had every day over just, my situation. I pretty much was in constant fear. And, I grew up in an area that was actually, it's a strange place. I grew up in Bakersfield, California, which, people are like, oh, that's a farming town. But if anyone knows like the city of Bakersfield, it's actually a pretty, it's not what people would expect. Let's put it that way. So, and I grew up, about probably a half mile from, like the center of downtown. My grandfather was a police officer there for 35 years. So, for me, my childhood was just very isolated. I didn't, talk to girls. I didn't know how to talk to girls. I really just, up until the point that I was a teenager, I just didn't feel like I belonged. And so I didn't really have an identity. I didn't really know who I was. And it wasn't until, I know that I joined the military really seeking to find an escape and find an identity and to find purpose. And, as a kid that got picked on and beat up a lot, I wanted to become dangerous. I wanted to become respected. I wanted to become feared. I wanted the opposite of everything that I had been experiencing. And so the military for me was, a place that I could get those things that I had never had.
Yeah. And I'm sure a lot of people join the military for those reasons.
And again, that's why I'm saying it's a pattern. You know what I mean? Yeah, it's a pattern you see over and over again. Exactly. Right. We're all, similar in ways.
I mean, I didn't join the military, I guess, to get away from the family, because I left high school. I left and went to go work in DC right after I graduated high school. I was one of those more adventurous people, but when you go back and say the children, like, I didn't know I grew up poor until later. Kids don't realize that they're poor, right? Because they're living their surroundings and stuff like that. And, until later, until you maybe get into school, like I say, the kids start picking on you because of the clothes you have on. Some of these kids, have to wear the same clothes, maybe twice a week or something like that, because they just don't have much because they don't have it. So, and that definitely can be, a factor, kids growing up and what they do, later in life as far as going to the military and whatnot. So, but let me see. I had a couple other questions. So beyond, actually we touched on, because one of the questions was beyond veterans, who else might
Oh yeah.
benefit from the concepts of this book, and that's anybody. Like you said, just anybody who's going through.
Yes, but you kind of touched on it, and we started talking about something else. So I do want to re-mention that,
Go for it.
especially you mentioned it, especially everyone we had talked about, but on top of that, especially the family and close friends of veterans, first responders, or people going through this. Definitely, the book would help them maybe understand a little bit more of why my boyfriend, husband, whatever is why is he acting this way? Why is he doing these things? Why is he, always self-destructive and all those different things. This book hopefully, will educate not just for the people themselves, but for hopefully their loved ones and immediate family, to help them understand what the other person's going through.
And so the most common misconception, I would say, what do you think that is about these warriors that you hope that this book will correct on people?
It's a good question. I mean, there's a lot of them, but probably the fundamental thing that I want to dispel is that a lot of people look at special operations and go, oh, those guys are they're warriors, they're heroes, they don't have that, oh, they don't have PTSD. And again, I've already talked about PTSD, but
yeah,
I want people to understand it doesn't matter what units you served in, it doesn't matter any of that stuff. At the end of the day, all of us are human. We all feel. And even if you go through a period of shutting down emotion and not feeling, like quite frankly I did while I was in, at a certain point, once you get out, once you've been out long enough, those feelings are still there. You just haven't felt them, but they're there, dormant, in your body somewhere.
Absolutely.
And so, all of us at some point, what I really want to help people do through this book is, most people like myself shut down emotion because to protect themselves, because it hurt for whatever reason. And that's not a way to live life. Life is designed to be experienced with emotions. And for whatever reason you shut it down, whether it was prior to the job, to do the job, the best way to go forward in life is to learn how to start feeling again. And when you do, it's tough, but ultimately that leads more to a life worth living than one that's shut off from all feeling and emotion.
And I think that may be the ending question. I would say, if there's one message you would like readers to take from this book, what would it be? I think that may be it right there.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, I think so too. And the other thing, I'll end with this, because I this is a critical issue for me with veterans specifically, and that is comparison in the veteran community needs to stop. Right? It doesn't matter how long you served, where you served, units, combat, non-combat, 27 deployments, 1 deployment. None of that matters. At the end of the day, I ask people, I get people say, oh, I didn't do what you did. I did. And I go, hold on. Did you serve? Yeah.
Did you serve? Did you serve?
I said, did you serve? And they go, well, yeah. And I go, me too. We're both veterans. And
did you have to leave your family? Did you have to deploy? Did you, we all had, maybe not like to do the same job, but at some point, most of us all had to leave our families. We all had to leave home. We had to,
Yeah. And once we establish that similarity, then we have a ton in common. As soon as we start comparing and getting in details, then we start highlighting our differences rather than our massive similarities.
Right. Absolutely. I talked to veterans, and and a guy would say, well, I only served 4 years. I'm like, did you serve? I don't care if it was 4 years. It could be 2 years.
That's exactly 2 years.
Don't say that.
What I'm talking about.
You served, bro.
And by the way, where do you think that comes from? That's that self-worth talking.
That's self-worth.
Oh,
right.
I'm not
worthy of you. You did 27 years. I only did 4.
There you
so
go.
I'm not worthy. You are worthy.
We're all worthy, and we need to look at ourselves in the mirror, remind ourselves that, and then if we can remind ourselves, we can look at each other and remind each other of the same.
There it is, man. Absolutely. Absolutely. Forged in Chaos, where can people get your book?
Right now, it actually comes out in around 2 weeks, and right now it's for sale on pre-order on Amazon.com.
Pre-order Amazon.com. Forged in Chaos, a warrior's origin story. It's gonna be a great book. I actually have a copy.
Oh,
I'm
awesome.
actually reading it now. Yeah,
I
yeah.
hope you dig it. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh no,
Yeah.
I'm loving it. I'm in between that and Downriver of Ryan McDermott. So I'm back
Oh, yeah,
back
yeah,
and
yeah.
forth.
I've heard his name. I'll have to check out. I know the name, so I'll have to check out his book.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. His
awesome.
book
Well,
is awesome.
thank you. I appreciate having me on.
And thank you for coming, man. Thank you for doing what you do. And this is a big thing. And I hope people read the book. It'll be out in a couple of weeks. It says you can
Yep.
pre-order it.
Yep.
Forest
Yep.
in Chaos on Amazon. So Tyler, thank you, brother. I appreciate you, man, for coming in the line.
Thank you so much, man. Have a good one.
With us. You too. Take care.
Yeah. Same to you, man. Bye.
All right, so there it is. Tyler Gray, Forest in Chaos, a warrior's origin story. So the big thing right now is, like, say, we got these nuts, man, these kooks. I'm getting some text messages. These, people, and I guess they're, up in northern Idaho. It seems like the sheriff, what they're saying, that they are blending in with their surroundings. So these people have been well prepared. It seems like that they're well prepared. I guess he's saying this could be a multi-day operation. They cannot neutralize quickly up there, and Kootenai County, Coeur d'Alene, Idaho. They're up in up around the Canfield Mountains and taking shots at first responders. So, we'll be getting into that, a little later. But this is kind of crazy, man. Hopefully these guys, and we've allowed so many people into this country. I'm pop myself back up on the screen, but we've allowed, ourselves so much, so many illegals in this country. We don't know who it is. It could just be a nut zealot, on the left. Normally it's a nut zealot on the left, or some tranny, right? And some trans person that goes and does this crazy stuff, right? But we never know now. I mean, right now, we know we have these terror cells and in our country at the moment. And so we don't know. Hopefully they'll neutralize this. Hopefully they'll find, maybe this guy just want to play Rambo. Hell, I don't know. Maybe he wants to play Rambo, and like I say, sound like he's pretty locked in there and pretty prepared. He's blending in with the surroundings, man, with the camouflage. So hopefully they can get this guy soon. So, hey, you guys have any questions, man? Thank you guys for tuning. I see K9, Mally over there, and baseballs and whatnot. I hope you guys actually enjoyed the two guests, the two heroes, of the guests and everything. Tyler is freezing on point. I know, right? You noticed that, Jackie, right? He kept freezing on the good points, man. They didn't want him to really share the truth, and on that. But I really have to really focus, because, like I said, I know, a couple of my friends that committed suicide, man. I never would have thought. You never know what people are going through. You never would think that these people, around you are suffering, because they seem normal, right? Sometimes, they don't give any warnings, any signals, or anything like that, to where they're hurting. So if you're hurting, if you are, suffering from any of the things that we described today, the loneliness, the low self-worth, go talk to people, man. It's best to talk to people than take your life, man. Because, like Tyler said, only a person that has low self-worth, they don't care about themselves, can take their life. And I mean, that would probably be true. I would think. So we're gonna do that. And like I say, go and get some help, man. We have these 1-800 hotlines, for vets, especially veterans that serve in these wars. You're not alone. Let these people know that they're not alone. Okay. And so, hey, Mally, I see you, man. So we're gonna rock it, man. So next week, but like I said, Wednesday, because I'm not gonna be here Sunday. I'm on vacation. I'm on vacation next Sunday. But what I'm gonna do with the Wednesday live at, like I said, I think it's gonna be 9 a.m. here, 9 a.m. my time, 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time. 11 o'clock Eastern Standard Time, I believe, is going to be the time. But hopefully you get the notification when I go live. And I'm also going to replay the show on Sunday. So I'm not going to be here Sunday, but the show will be replayed on Sunday. All right, just in case you miss it. And of course, it's going to be on every podcast station out there because I'm on every podcast station. I got Apple Podcasts, you got Amazon, iHeartRadio. The show's on iHeartRadio, and just it's on Anchor, wherever you want to see the show, wherever you want to watch the show. Just search the Radical Republicans Live Show, and you'll pop it up there. All right. So, but hold up, because we're gonna go out. I mean, since I had two veterans on today, we gotta go out on a vet song, to honor those that still serve, honor those that still stand the watch, man. The ones that still stand the watch, the ones that still are out there keeping us safe, even though sometimes it seems like our government don't want them to be safe, putting everyone in harm's way for other things. But Wednesday, we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about that. Like I say, if you join the show late, on Wednesday, I'm going to have Francois Michaela live from Israel on the show, back on the show. She was here about 3 years ago. And we're going to talk about current events happening in Israel. We're going to talk about the deep state of Israel. We're going to talk about, you guys hear about the deep state here in the United States, right? You guys talk about that. But you know what, Francois says that there's a deep state in Israel as well. And it's all united. It's the globalists. They're all united, and it's all the same. It's all the same. So when we talk about you're crazy, you're conspiracy theorist. Well, I'm gonna have someone live from Israel that's gonna tell you some stories about what's going on there. We're gonna talk about Gaza. We're gonna talk about the Palestinians. We're gonna talk about it all, like we do here on the Radical Republicans Live Show. So, I know it's gonna be the second hour of of Bannon. It's going to be the second hour of Bannon. You can watch Bannon later. This is going to be live. Bannon's not going to have no one live from Israel on his show. None of these podcasters, none of them is going to have anybody live from Israel on their show. You name one. Joe Rogan, not going to have it. Charlie Kirk, not going to have it. The Breakfast Club, not going to have it. Steve Bannon, not going to have it. Not live. Not live. But we're going to have it here on the Radical Republicans Live Show Wednesday morning. I'm going to start promoting it tomorrow, so you'll see the promotions if you follow me on X or on Getter. And I'm not posting on Facebook because I'm going dark on Facebook because maybe I'll put up the post on Facebook. I'm not posting, but maybe I'll put up something on Facebook. I'll put it on Truth Social, so it'll go out, so you know about it, so you know when to tune in. And it's gonna be a fabulous show. It's going to be a fabulous show. So make sure you all tune in Wednesday morning. I know most of you are going to be at work. Now, some of you work from home, so you can put it up. But I know some of you are going to be working. If you are at work, it'll be on the podcast directly after the show. And, of course, it's going to be recorded. It's going to be on Rumble. It's going to be on Getter. It's going to be on X. So it's going to be on YouTube for you YouTubers like Carolyn and what is that? Susan, I think, is on YouTube tonight. Yep, she's on YouTube tonight. So, but it's going to be out there for y'all to watch. And it's going to be a very, very interesting show. So I have pretty much everything geared up for it. So start looking for the promotion of the show tomorrow morning sometime. And we're going to rock it. But for now, we're going to get out of here. And I appreciate you for tuning in the live Radical Republican show every Sunday night at 8 p.m. So I thank you all that that are here regularly and that contribute to the show as well. So, all right, we're going out. So I'll check you guys out.
American girls and American guys
next week.
On
Wednesday, actually.
We'll always recognize
on
when
Wednesday.
we see
So
old
we'll
glory
do
fly.
that. Actually, I'm gonna change it. I'd rather do this song right now because the guest we had. This one is more fitting, I think. What do y'all think?
It's the guts and it's the glory.
So y'all be cool.
100 stripes, 100 stories.
I see you guys Wednesday morning.
It's the Pledge of Allegiance on the 4th of July.
Wednesday morning, day before 4th of July, we're
It's
gonna
them
have it.
handwritten
And
letters from home. It's them sleepless nights
hopefully, I
alone.
won't forget to tell you guys have a great
It's
Independence
his
Day on
newborn
Wednesday, but you
baby
guys
he
have a
left
safe
with
one.
his wife.
So I'll see you guys Wednesday morning.
Mr. Red, white, and
You guys
blue.
take care.
Lay down, here's a line. Mr. Red, white, and blue. For these stars and stripes. Hey. From the fields of Indiana to the swamps of Louisiana to the golden coast of California, Uncle Sam's the only family he's got. His purple heartbeat won't stop. And his 18th birthday was the day he was born. Mr. Red, white, and blue, lay down, here's the line. Mr. Red, white, and blue, for these stars and stripes. Mr. Red, white, and blue, stand on the front line. Mr. Red, white, and blue, pay the ultimate price. He was the man of the house when he was born. His family is proud but torn. But if you knew him, you would understand. He was raised on how to be brave, just to see the flag still wave. And then he came home with only one hand. He's Mr. Red, white, and blue. Lay down here. For these stars and stripes, stay on these front lines. He'll pay the ultimate price. Lay down his life. Mr. Red, white, and blue, for these stars and stripes. March in line, march in line.